to see things differently. I am determined to see things differently. I am determined to see things differently. I am determined to see things differently. Thank you all so much for joining me today. I'm forgiveness teacher from the Ozarks, Miracle Willie, and we're ready for lesson 21 in A Course in Miracles workbook for students. We thank Foundation for Inner Peace for the publisher. And today is Sunday, January the 21st of 2024. I am determined to see things differently. The idea for today is obviously, a continuation and extension of the preceding one. Yesterday is I'm determined to see. Today he's saying, well, we want to see things differently than feeling vulnerable and getting angry and all those negative emotions. We want to be in the kingdom of heaven. I'm determined to see things differently. The idea for today is obviously a continuation and extension of the preceding one. This time, however, specific mind-searching periods are necessary, in addition to applying the idea to particular situations as they may arise. And we're going to get into this in a little bit. Let's come back and read that at the end so that we can go right directly into our meditation and be fresh in our minds. But we'll go ahead and take the idea with us as we're studying today. I am determined to see things differently. Let's go look in our text reading, and we're ready. We're in chapter 3, The Innocent Perception, and we're ready for Roman numeral 3, Perception versus Knowledge. We've been emphasizing perception and have said very little about knowledge as yet. This is because perception must be straightened out before you can know anything. To know is to be certain. Uncertainty means that you do not know. Knowledge is power because it is certain, and certainty is strength. Perception is temporary. As an attribute of the belief in space and time, it is subject to either fear or love. Misperceptions produce fear, and true perception foster love. Misperceptions produce fear, and true perceptions foster love. But neither brings certainty, because all perception varies. That is why it is not knowledge. True perception is the basis for knowledge, but knowing is the affirmation of truth and beyond all perception. Paragraph 2. All your difficulties stem from the fact that you do not recognize yourself, your brother, or God. Wow, that's quite a statement. All your difficulties stem from the fact that you do not recognize yourself, your brother, or God. To recognize means to know again, implying that you knew before. You can see in many ways because perception involves interpretation, and this means that it is not whole or consistent. The miracle, being a way of perceiving, is not knowledge. The miracle, being a way of perceiving, is not knowledge. It is the right answer to a question, but you do not question when you know. Questioning illusions is the first step in undoing them. Questioning illusions is the first step in undoing them. The miracle, or the right answer, corrects them. Since perceptions change, their dependence on time is obvious. How you perceive at any given time determines what you do, and actions must occur in time. Knowledge is timeless, because certainty is not questionable. You know when you have ceased to ask questions. You know when you have ceased to ask questions. Paragraph 3. The questioning mind perceives itself in time, and therefore looks for future answers. The closed mind believes the future and the present will be the same. This establishes a seemingly stable state that is usually an attempt to counteract an underlying fear that the future will be worse than the present. This fear inhibits the tendency to question at all. That is such an important concept. I want to make sure you get it. Let's just read that paragraph again. It's a short one. The questioning mind perceives itself in time and therefore looks for future answers. The closed mind, the one that doesn't question because it's closed, the closed mind believes the future and the present will be the same. This establishes a seemingly stable state that is usually an attempt to counteract an underlying fear that the future will be worse than the present. This fear inhibits the tendency to question at all. 4. True vision is the natural perception of spiritual sight, but it is still a correction rather than a fact. Spiritual sight is symbolic, and therefore not a device for knowing. It is, however, a means of right perception, which brings it into the proper domain of the miracle. A, in quotes, vision of God, a vision of God would be a miracle rather than a revelation. The fact that perception is involved at all removes the experience from the realm of knowledge. That is why visions, however holy, do not last. The Bible tells you to know yourself or be certain. And I'm not exactly sure where he was referring to that because those exact words I've never found in the Bible. But the concept is throughout the Bible. A couple of places that you might consider is Mark chapter 12, verse 30 and 31, where Jesus says, love your neighbor as yourself. You can't love someone as yourself unless you know yourself. And Matthew chapter 5 and verse 48. Just a couple places where that's where it says, be ye perfect, even as your Father in heaven is perfect. Well, if you're going to be perfect, you're going to know yourself. Certainty is always of God. So let's read that again. The Bible tells you to know yourself or be certain. Certainty is always of God. When you love someone, you have perceived him as he is, and this makes it possible for you to know him. Until you first perceive him as he is, you cannot know him. While you ask questions about him, you are clearly implying that you do not know God. Oh, catch that. While you ask questions about him, you are clearly implying that you do not know God. Certainty does not require action. When you say you are acting on the basis of knowledge, you are really confusing knowledge with perception. Knowledge provides the strength for creative thinking, but not for right doing. Perception, miracles, and doing are closely related. Knowledge is the result of revelation and induces only thought. Knowledge is the result of revelation and induces only thought. Even in its most spiritualized form, perception involves the body. Knowledge comes from the altar within and is timeless because it is certain. To perceive the truth is not the same as to know it. Paragraph 6. Right perception is necessary before God can communicate directly to his altars, which he establishes in his sons. Again on that sentence. Right perception is necessary before God can communicate directly to his altars, that'd be us, which he established in his sons. We're his altars, his sons. There he can communicate his certainty, and his knowledge will bring peace without question. God is not a stranger to his sons, and his sons are not strangers to each other. Knowledge preceded both perception and time, and will ultimately replace them. That is the real meaning of Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end. And that's a quote out of Revelation chapter 22 and verse 13. So knowledge preceded both perception and time, and will ultimately replace them. That is the real meaning of Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end. And before Abraham was, I am. That was a quote where Jesus was talking, and he said that in John chapter 8, verse 58. Before Abraham was, I am. Perception can and must be stabilized, but knowledge is stable. Fear God and keep his commandments becomes know God and accept his certainty. And that's lifted from Ecclesiastes chapter 12 and verse 13. Fear God and keep his commandments becomes know God. We don't want to fear God. He's trying to get us to see another way of looking at the written words in the Bible. It's a book about love because it's a book about God. But we want to try to understand it in the way that God would understand it. So he's saying, fear God and keep his commandments becomes know God and accept his certainty. In the last paragraph, 7, if you attack error in another, you will hurt yourself. You cannot know your brother when you attack him. Attack is always made upon a stranger. You are making him a stranger by misperceiving him, and so you cannot know him. It is because you have made him a stranger that you are afraid of him. Perceive him correctly so that you can know him. There are no strangers in God's creation. And we're as we enter the kingdom of heaven, and that's where we ought to be wanting to enter, if we've been praying the Lord's Prayer all our lives, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And as we're really wanting to live that life in heaven, we don't have strangers. We have brothers. We have different parts of the one sonship. There are no strangers in God's creation. To create as he created, you can create only what you know, and therefore accept as yours. God knows his children with perfect certainty. He created them by knowing them. He recognizes them perfectly. When they do not recognize each other, they do not recognize him. Boy, that speaks of that passage, I think it's there in James, where it says, how can you say that you love God whom you have not seen if you don't love your neighbor or your brother whom you have seen? And of course that certainly also goes along with Matthew 5:48, which we talked about earlier, which be ye perfect even as your Father in heaven is perfect. And so he's saying here, let me just read it again, there are no strangers in God's creation. To create as he created, you can create only what you know, and therefore accept as yours. God knows his children with perfect certainty. He created them by knowing them. He recognizes them perfectly. When they do not recognize each other, and I might add perfectly, when they do not recognize each other, they do not recognize him. And of course, that all brings up the whole idea of perfect love casts out fear. If you're afraid of your brother, just offer a little more love. And that's what we're learning to do in our Course in Miracles, is learning how to love the way that, and eventually we won't have to be reminded, because the knowledge will reawaken, and we'll know what we knew and we came to forget. Okay, well, before we read our lesson, let's take a look at holy days, holidays, and observances around the world. International Play Date Day. Might be a good day to take your partner on a date. International Sweat Pants Day. National Cheesy Socks Day. National Granola Bar Day. And granola bars are easy to make. Basically just make you some granola cereal and crunch it up and roast it. Kind of put enough binder in it that you can form it into that'll stick together. Things like flaxseed eggs. Flax egg, which is a tablespoon of ground flaxseed and 3 tablespoons of warm water, and let it set for I don't know, 5 minutes probably. And then mix that in with your ingredient. That's what we call a flax egg for us vegans. You don't have to be a vegan to be a Course in Miracles student, though. I like to be sure to remind that, even though I do think it's a nice way to live for the environment, for your own health, and I just don't like killing animals. National Hug Your Puppy Day. Well, there you go. Talking about animals. National Hugging Day. My dog's around here somewhere. My puppy. Oh, Jed. He likes to sing with me. One of these days I'll let him sing with us. National Hugging Day. National, what do we got here? Sanctity of Human Life Day. Sanctity of Human Life. That's probably a pro-life day. I think that any civilization that's gonna be long lasting is gonna have to honor life. And New England Clam Chowder Day. For you people that live on the coast, that's probably a major part of your diet. One-Liners Day. I should have had a one-liner. The one that comes to me, the most important one, is what we just said earlier. I guess the one I would say we didn't say earlier is let go and let God. That's a good one-liner I say to myself a lot. The one I was going to say is perfect love casts out fear. Squirrel Appreciation Day. There's 3 basic squirrels that live here in the Ozarks. There's the Sciurus niger, which is the fox squirrel. There's the Sciurus carolinensis, which is the gray squirrel. And then there's the Glaucomus volans, which is the southern flying squirrel. So just a little bit about squirrels. World Religion Day. And I found on issues online that they say that 83% of the world population is part of these following 12 religions. They're listed alphabetically here. Baha'i, Buddhism, Christianity, Confucianism, Hinduism, Islam, Jainism, Judaism, Shinto, Sikhism, Taoism, Zoroastrianism. And there's 2 other religions, one maybe not a religion, but I still think of it as a religion. The 2 that aren't listed that I think that probably ought to be, that would wrap up a lot of people, indigenous ways, Native American, Native African, Native whatever. Their practices are certainly sacred, religious. And then also, I like to think of it to those that are agnostic or atheist, or maybe a religion that doesn't have a name. In reality, there's 8 billion people. There's probably 8 billion. There's 8 billion religions. But we try to narrow it down to something that we can talk about. And I would like to recognize what Paul noticed when he was to the unknown God. Was that in the Parthenon that he saw that? Anyway, to the unknown. So to the unknown, whatever you might call it, science is kind of functions on that level. Of course, so does Buddhism. Anyway, many. Let's not go much deeper than that on those. Nova elderberry. In edible landscaping, the Nova elderberry, and I don't think I said yesterday that the elderberries is the Sambucus canadensis, and the Nova, it says Nova was selected and introduced from Vinland Fruit Station, Ontario. Fruit clusters are above average, and plant will set fruit planted alone or pollinate with other native elderberries. Smaller bush than Adams, space 6-foot circle, zones 3 through 9. And then also out of Permaculture for Beginners, the next section that she writes about is spiders, or are spiders. Spiders are ferocious insect predators. Some make webs to catch their prey, and others are free-range hunters. Most are harmless to people. So, learn to appreciate the acnids. Don't be one of those acnophobias. The arachnid, I found this on dictionary.com. Definition: they're wingless carnivores, arthropod of the class Arachnida, including spiders, scorpions, mites, ticks, daddy long legs, having a body divided into two parts, the cephalothorax and the abdomen, and having 8 appendages, 8 legs, and no antennae. Anyway, I thought, well, that's a good definition. So learn to familiarize yourself with all the different spiders. They're a wonderful part of the garden, and when a spider comes walking through my house, we usually try to catch it in a jar, and I go let it outside. Okay. I am determined to see things differently. The idea for today is obviously a continuation and extension of the preceding one. This time, however, specific mind-searching periods are necessary, in addition to applying the idea to particular situations as they may arise. 5 practice periods are urged, allowing a full minute for each. In the practice periods, begin by repeating the idea to yourself, then close your eyes and search your mind carefully for situations, past, present, and anticipated, that arouse anger in you. The anger may take the form of any reaction ranging from mild irritation to rage. The degree of the emotion you experience does not matter. You will become increasingly aware that a slight twinge of annoyance is nothing but a veil drawn over intense fury. Oh my. Try therefore not to let the, in quotes, little thoughts of anger escape you in the practice periods. Remember that you do not really recognize what arouses anger in you, and nothing that you believe in this connection means anything. You will probably be tempted to dwell more on some situations or persons than on others on the fallacious grounds that they are more obvious. This is not so. It is merely an example of the belief that some forms of attack are more justified than others. And we're going to learn that no attack is ever justified. If you can accept that one generalization, you can not go through a whole lot of hell in your life. He said you can learn by that one generalization and save yourself a lot of time. As you search your mind for all the forms in which attack thoughts present themselves, hold each one in mind while you tell yourself, I'm determined to see and name a person differently. Or I'm determined to see and specify a situation differently. Try to be as specific as possible. You may, for example, focus your anger on a particular attribute of a particular person, believing that the anger is limited to this aspect. If your perception is suffering from this form of distortion, say, I'm determined to see, and then specify the attribute, and then name the person differently. Okay, so you think you got it? I am determined to see things differently. And we'll do a minute meditation here. I'll sing the song a couple times too, and then we'll just kind of let you do a minute or so of mind searching. And let's see. Let's make sure we got this down right. I practiced these the night before, and I put just a little bit on a device and listened to it just to make sure I got the right tune. I am determined to see things differently. 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 Now name a person. I am determined to see differently. 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 Now name a situation. I am determined to see differently. I am determined to see differently. I am determined to see differently. And of course, you can use that throughout the day if anything comes to you that makes you discouraged. And also, I'm determined to see, and you can specify an attribute in someone. And you can say, I'm going to see that attribute differently. I am determined to see things differently. And our word for peace is in the Persian language, the Farsi language, which is spoken in Iraq, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Azerbaijan, Iran, and Iraq. And our word for peace in Farsi is Solh. Solh. Solh, I think is how it's pronounced. Solh. I am determined to see things differently. Solh.